right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Fitness Philadelphia. I'm Dr. John Herding, and today it's my pleasure, as always, to interview the great Jim Ferris. What's going on, Jim? How are you?
All right, John, I'm doing good. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. We've known each other for a long time, and you've been a great mentor and colleague to me. So I just want to first put out there, I really appreciate everything you've done personally for myself. But one of the reasons I really wanted to have you on is because you've done for both the Philadelphia area and as with the strength and conditioning industry as a whole, you've really been a pioneer in helping to lead the way and lead the charge for young professionals up and coming, and then to just really bring well-researched, pragmatic, easy information to the masses to show them that fitness and strength and conditioning and performance isn't super complicated if you do it the right way and you don't get lost in the weeds, so to speak, right?
Right.
So I think before we really get into it, why don't you give everybody kind of like who you are, what got you into the industry, your background story, to kind of give them a little bit of perspective of where you're coming from as we get deeper into the conversation.
Okay. I'm a born and raised Delco guy, so I might have the accent come out on the podcast. Comes out more when you get me mad. Certain words kind of linger a little bit, but I've been in the industry for about 20 years. I'm a Westchester University graduate, and I was lucky enough to have a local internship in Bryn Mawr. So like day one for me, I was working for a high level sports agent, and I was just exposed to a lot of things that, some people might not get to like 10 years down the line or 20 years. And I was kind of doing it on day one. So it was just a great opportunity for me and opened my eyes to a lot of, I guess, things that, how you said, working with younger people entering the industry, it's like, wow, like this is in theory and practice, like this is reality. Dealing with personalities, dealing with other coaches, dealing with agents, dealing with managers, and all these things that just you're like, well, okay, I wrote you a perfect 60-minute program, but it doesn't fit into the reality of what we're dealing with day to day, maybe in certain situations. So I think I've had a lot of experience with seeing things from all different angles, and I can kind of, I think, help mentor and younger coaches understand like what happens in the real world versus from the classroom, and how you blend them both, for the betterment of the people that you're serving.
Well, yeah, because I've seen you work through the years that I've known you. I've seen you work with, and even before I knew you, a 10-year-old, male soccer player, female soccer player, all the way up through one of the best basketball players in the world through working with the Sixers.
Right.
So tell me how that has kind of crafted your practice, and what you said, like those athletes all have vastly different requirements of their program and how their program is going to work for them. But I'm sure there's a lot of similarities too between one of the, Grant, you were probably working with the top 5 basketball player in the world at the time you were with the Sixers, right?
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's a lot of similarities also between the 10-year-old adolescent athlete and this high level athlete.
Right. Because, the environment's different, ages and stuff like that. But I think you look at it, it's like, it's a coaching opportunity somewhere different, somewhere else on the developmental chain for somebody. Like, can you coach someone that's never been coached versus someone that's coming in the NBA, that's coming from, an ACC, SEC school that's already had like 8 years of exposure to somebody, and you might just have to fine tune them. So, there's a different enjoyment for I think everybody that you get to work with, because just where they are. But when you get to work with a 10-year-old, and then they're 17, and you get invited to their graduation party, and they got their scholarship offer, and you get a picture with them, with their letter of intent and stuff like that. I mean, that's better to me than babysitting a glorified professional that's home for 8 weeks. And just going through motions, like, I mean, I want to coach. I know coaching happens in very different ways based off situations, but like when you can really help make an impact on a 10-year-old, a 12-year-old, maybe a kid that wasn't a starter, didn't make a team, that is now progressing, right? obviously there's things involved like puberty and things like that help them get there. But when you're along for the ride with somebody for so long, like it starts at, that age,
Yeah.
like inheriting Allen Iverson on a roster, like that's luck. Like, it's not like it was like, I did anything to make that happen, but it was like, I got to work with a lot of those guys and Chris Webbers and Iguodala's, and then like different veterans like Kevin Ollie, who, was a guy that just learned how to hang around the league for 15 plus years and became a coach. So, I really like admire where everybody is on their journey and, just getting to be a part of it. And it just forces you to coach different, like, it's just, like I said, different ages, different experiences, different environments. It's like, all the sports science gadgets that I have, but then I go coach in Jamaica for a week with a soccer club that plays on a dirt field, and we have nothing. So, it's everything I get to do. It's like a constant reminder for me. And obviously you can tell, like, that's how I post on social media. It's always constant reminders. It's not messages like just for you. I post a lot of stuff sometimes because I need to hear it again for myself, because I'm gonna complain because my gym wear ran out of batteries one day. And I'm like, really, like, all right, it makes sense. So,
well, and because social media came up, Jim's very active. And if you guys want to go follow him, it's at Jim GYM Ferris, FERRIS on Instagram. But I'm glad you brought out, before we get too deep in this conversation, get way off track. You mentioned a couple of the opportunities there, but when you were coming right out of school, you were pretty much thrown right into being I'm glad you brought the Sixers. I was going to wait for you to do it. I didn't, because you're one of the most humble guys I know as far as your experiences and what you've been able to do. But when you came out of college, you were a 22-year-old thrown right into being one of the strength and conditioning coaches for the Sixers, correct?
yeah.
And then you were there for 10 years?
In and out, different roles, probably from the year after the finals, 2002, up to like the 2007, 2008.
Got it.
And it was, like I said, it was just various roles. It was because we were almost like a subcontract, right? Almost run like NovaCare was used to like running with stuff like that with PT. Right. But yeah, I mean, I had times I was almost like full time to periods where I was like down once or twice a week. Right. It was just depending on the contract.
And I think that brings you such a unique perspective of right out of school being thrown into that situation and having to kind of learn by the seat of your pants, but make sure these guys were provided with the optimal opportunity to compete in the NBA finals, right?
Year after, I never saw playoffs.
Oh, I'm so sorry. But anyway, like, but then you've parlayed that into now, just to let everybody know what you're doing now, you've parlayed that into an experiences and where you've been able to network, and now you've crafted your own niche of you've had your own business now for the last 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Tell us about your own business and what you're piecing together there. And then I would like to get into some of how you've been able to get network. And maybe that's where we focus this conversation, and is to maybe for the young professional who's in learning how to network and navigate the profession, because you mentioned the Jamaica trips, you've mentioned some of the other stuff. How have you now been able to craft your current business, and what types of opportunities have you been able to put yourself in just through the connections you've made?
So I think one of the first things I did back through the Sixers and the Summit Sports Training Center, the company I worked with, was building that personal network, right? And one of the first things I ended up doing when I left and went private sector was I found another agent, because agents have clients. And the agent I started to work with is Dozie Manobu. He's the Lehigh grad, played basketball there, I think in like the late 80s. And, I started this private practice, and I had an easy first summer because I just had a bunch of NBA clientele and overseas players fill my book. But it was like getting to September, and I was like, well, what am I going to do next? Like, how am I going to go find general pop people, high school clients and whatever? But, talking with Dozie, it's like, what's the job of the agent? The agent wants to get paid. How does he get paid? He gets his player a contract, right? So we started to spin things. I was like, well, what can you get me? Like, what can you get a strength coach? So he started doing some stuff where he brought, teams over here for like a US training experience. And I got to be a strength coach with a club for a summer here, and referrals for different agents where players were coming to, train in Philly for the summer and play pickup and do all that stuff. I was like the main go-to person for the strength and conditioning performance side of things. And, he's constantly puts things, across my desk when, I've turned down a bunch of stuff just because some of the travel is a little ridiculous and, the pay stuff's not there because it's such an odd thing. But, I wouldn't have had a bunch of these trips to Europe and the ability to consult with some of these clubs without him, because, he's had the players, he's played overseas professionally, and he has all the connections, and he handles all the business work, all the contracts and stuff like that. Cause it's like, you hear nightmares of things. You go overseas and you sign a contract and it's like, are you getting paid? Is it going to be legit? Or are you going to get sent home? So that's always one thing I tell people growing up. It's like, you don't have to just be an athlete to have an agent. Like, you can be a strength coach because, there's opportunities that they can create if you have an agent that has that type of network. So I think that's a cool thing. If you want to see the world and you want to do some other stuff, like if you train athletes, connect with their agent and, you can spark some ideas up, 1 week, 2 week consultation trips. Like, I was in the CBA for 3+ months. The only reason I came home is because I was only married for 9 months. So
yeah.
I really didn't have a choice to come back. But the opportunity was great. Like, it was an amazing experience.
Yep. So you've been to China, you've coached soccer team. Basketball's one of your main, a main interest. You've been to Jamaica coaching soccer teams. You've been to Greece to present at international fitness conferences.
I repped Aerobes for a while, the German company. So I would go to that international, it was almost like an Arnold, right? In Cologne, Germany every year, where it was just like a convention. And, I shook hands with people from, all over Europe and still have their contacts today. Right. So, there's just a lot of ways that you can get yourself involved out there. And it doesn't mean it's, doing equipment rep for something can be like a real quick thing. Like, I'm going to be at the CSCCA next week for Eccentric, displaying K-Box and K-Pulley and whatever other gadgets that they're going to bring.
Yep.
So, there's a lot of different ways that you can be involved. That's just going to help you personally grow with a network and potential business opportunities.
Absolutely. I think that's a great thing to think about if you're a young up and coming strength coach. But also, your bread and butter too is, and how you pay most of your bills, I assume, is just training. You found the Gen Pop clients, and you're training, and you have a mix of. Tell us where you're training currently, like small groups, but then you're also doing some in-home stuff as well, right?
Yeah. So I have a pretty solid cut and paste schedule. I'm at Bryn Mawr at LPE, which is probably a mile and a half from Villanova's campus. And I have a couple of interns of mine own a place out in Ambler called Fast Twitch. So that's kind of becoming like the afternoon spot for me. So kind of have a split day, like AMs in Bryn Mawr, Nova area. And then I come back towards home for the PM type stuff. And, that's just something that will probably change seasonally, but I'll push probably more out this way once, we get back to fall. Just for, it's just a convenience thing and, an easy place for me to work.
Well, because you seem like one of those guys who you're never going to want to lose the in-person coaching, because I know when COVID hit and a lot of that went away, you were able to pivot as well. And now you have a pretty solid book of online coaching clients as well. So tell me how that works, because really where I want to get to with this is if someone's in the Philly area and really with your online program, it's expanded nationally and internationally to work with you. You've crafted these connections. You've crafted these styles of training where you've put yourself in a position where you can pretty much serve anyone that wants your services at this point.
Right. Yeah. The online stuff, I mean, that was obviously thanks to you for a couple months before that, giving me the nudge to look into it. But like the turnoff for me, because like I said, we've done stuff before all this was possible with the Google Docs, like, hey, here's your workout, see you in a few weeks, and come back and, nothing was done and communication was kind of incomplete. But using these online platforms like a True Coach, and I know there's other great ones out there. I've just, like I said, I've spent, 2 years now, almost 3, probably building out this platform. It's just very interactive. Like I wake up in the morning and I spend a half an hour checking emails and updates on it. And I have video feedback from clients. So I can legit assess squats, deadlifts, hang cleans, and, whatever people send me for feedback. So send a message right back and then click on to the next one. So I look at the list of people and it's not like, oh man, I forgot about this person for like 2 weeks, because I've had the platform, I think, up to about 150 people, which included teams and some other like small group projects that I did with it. But it's like, no, like you see it every day. Like you can scroll through it and you can see green or red if people are on and stuff. And it's much more interactive than I thought it would be. And for me as a coach, it's just been it's been great, because it's the same thing. It's like you write this workout and then you hit the button and you send it. And I'm like, that's really good. It's gonna be a good one. And then they write back and they're like, I don't get it. I didn't see this. I gotta know what that meant. And you're just like, what do you mean? Like, it's right there. Like A1 and A2, superset. So it's like a whole different language. And it's taught me how to, I think, be able to coach people better online, because like I've already went through 2 years of mistakes and cleaned stuff up. And like I said, I've got like 1,300 videos probably made so far. So for me, it's like, it's been eye-opening how bad I am at doing some specific exercises.
Absolutely.
I watched the video and I'm just like, oh man, let's retake that one.
And maybe, and I appreciate the shout out, but maybe it took a little urging for me, but you also put in a ton of time and a ton of work to making sure it was built out and it was a robust program for your clients.
Yeah, because like I said, I experimented with it, right? Like I did different tiering of how you could join, like a gold standard down to like a boot camp. I hosted teams on there. And then I got to a point, I'm like, this isn't reality. Well, I hoped the pandemic wasn't the way the world was going to stay.
Right.
But I said, what's going to happen when going back to live happens? Because I always believed it was going to. I didn't think, not going to get replaced. But I was like, how can I manage this? And, I've dropped it down to 50 clients as a max, just for, I know I can do more, but I can give people a better version of me by seeing less people on it in a certain aspect. It doesn't mean there's going to be time of years where I can't do a project or something, but my steady state on there is between 40 and 50 people.
Well, and I think that's really admirable of you to do that, because like I said before, like you still maintain your in-person coaching because you don't ever want to lose that. You just want to maintain what your bread and butter is. But then you have this like lower tier, lower price point where people get a monthly program for you, and it's still individualized. And you could bring that up to 100 or 150 people and completely kill it in the game. But you want to make sure these people are getting a completely individualized program that's specific to them, because your name's on the line ultimately, and you want to ride on their results.
Right. And like I said, we've talked about this before. I never want to turn someone away because of legit financial reasons. Right. And it's difficult, like obviously I have a name in the basketball world. So if I put a video out with a basketball person in it, I get a lot of outreach from people that, kids and stuff like that. And, I'll talk to the parents and I'll say, look, like, here's the cost, but the way we can do it, especially with the online platform, is give me a budget and let's make a timeline. How do you want to make this amount of money spread over 1, 2, 3, 4 months? And then I put that all into a plan. And obviously True Coach is leading it. And then I say, okay, and here's what we can do from a one-on-one perspective, or maybe a small group.
Right.
And it works out pretty fair that way, because people get what they want,
Mhm.
and I get what I deserve, and everyone's pretty happy.
Yeah, you're always seemingly willing to work with people, which is great. Again, like you're pretty much egoless. You put the person first. You want to make sure that they're getting the results that they deserve, but also with your experience and your connection and all of that, you want to make sure that you're making what you're worth as well, which is
Right.
really admirable. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what initially, we skipped over this entirely. What got you into the fitness industry? You're this Delco kid growing up. I'm assuming you were a stud at all the sports you played. You could jump through the roof. You could sprint a 10-second 100 meters.
Are we talking about like Nintendo and Genesis type stuff?
How did you end up at Westchester? What was your major? Give me a little bit of background to who Jim Ferris was and what made him pursue fitness as a career.
Probably a high school late bloomer. I was a kid that I broke my collarbone in 8th grade, and it was the first time I had like a major injury, and I had it right before a CYO All-Star game, and I was actually in the 3-point contest, which is the only thing I could do because I couldn't really dribble and I wasn't fast, but I could shoot. And I broke my collarbone the day before, and then I was out for like 3 months. And I lived like, basically I was like Cartman on South Park. I was just eating cheesy poofs and watching TV and playing games, and I gained all like that young teenage weight, had the the cheeks and everything going. And when I got to high school, we had like training camp, running camp for soccer, and I was we did the mile was one of the tests, and I was literally running like with the goalies, and it was just bad. And that repeated again the fall of my sophomore year, and I was just like, I just got to find something, like. And that's when I joined the crew team. That's when I became a rower. And we had December, January, February, March. You had a 4-month dry land before you even touch water. So I mean, and it was just fitness, man. There was no ball involved. There was nothing. You were going after metrics and times, and that was the only way you were going to get better. And that's where I truly got to I guess learn about work ethic and showing up and doing things. And that got me to join a gym in the off season, start to lift weights, and that really gained my interest. And I think I thought I was going to go to college to be a teacher. I always just it's just I always tell people, like, you go back and if you watch Dead Poets Society, like that was a movie that like triggered me, like the leadership that Robin Williams like had in that movie and the influence he had on kids. And then I started to see stuff from the coaching side, sports coaches, like you go John Chaney for me, you go Coach K, like their demand for excellence that they bring out of people. Like there is no second best. Like they're going to get your best, and they're going to teach you how to give your best. Remember the Titans, So all that kind of stuff was just a major influence on me. And, I chose Westchester, one, obviously because of the program, and two, because there was no rowing program. I didn't want to row anymore. I was toasted. I had some opportunities for college, and I was just done. It was just very taxing, and I just wanted to try to move on and do some other stuff. I ended up coaching like right away. I took like, a year off, but yeah, so that's how I ended up at Westchester. And, I picked the major, and I'm still doing it 20 plus years later.
Yeah. Which is the testament to what, the connections you've made, the education that you've pursued, how you've continued to mentor and educate others. Because I think you touched on something there, maybe unknowingly or maybe knowingly, that coaches in the fitness profession and trainers, and we're just really teachers anyway.
Right.
Yeah. Like, we're here to educate our clients, to help them on their path, to bring the best out of them, all those things that you mentioned. And I think sometimes that gets lost from many of the professionals, right? It's just, there's obviously, fitness, there's like the amusement park fitness, which is like the rah rah boot camps, or, you know, the flashing lights, loud music, big groups. And there's all these different segments. But so I feel like the science and the art of coaching gets lost sometimes. And I think you always bring it back to the science and the art in making sure you're tracking metrics in your programs. You briefly mentioned some of the technology that you have with Gym Aware at the very beginning, right?
Yeah.
But that's part of the foundations that you always go back to, is the tracking of the metrics to measure progression, and then coaching and mentoring to make sure you're bringing out the best in your students.
Yeah. It's and just live in the middle of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we just have extreme opposites on so many things. It's like, just live in the middle,
Right.
like learn what to collect, learn what not to collect, learn when to collect, and learn when just to not even turn machines on. Just let them train.
Yeah.
I just think there's you just kind of learn, and like I said, I'm a patient person. I can sit and observe, and I can take notes. And I think a lot of people think you have to have it figured out on day one, with a client. Like, it could take you 3 weeks to,
Mm-hmm.
like the assessments might not make sense. The chessboard might not make sense. It doesn't mean you're wrong with what you're going to do on day two. You might just need more time to figure things out.
Right.
And I think everyone's always thinking like it's got to be perfect. And like, I post a lot of things all the time, and like, yeah, look at that exercise. Look at that kid. Oh, why'd you let him move like that? I'm like, because it can happen,
Right.
right? Like, what do you expect?
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, and then it's like I said, I'm 20 years in, and I'm just really feeling like I'm starting to like
Yeah.
get it, man. And that's what I talk to these kids about. Like, you don't look in pro sports, and like, head coaches are usually like over 40, over 50 by the
Mm-hmm.
time they become a head coach. And we have people who think they're too smart for the industry after 3 months because they took one course, or they have one experience. But I'm like, you haven't done enough yet for
Right.
what your potential could be. It doesn't mean you're not good. Like, I know plenty of coaches under 30 years old who I think are exceptional.
Mm-hmm.
But like, imagine what it's going to be by the time you're 40 if you do it.
Right.
Imagine how much better your ebook will be if you waited 19 and a half more years instead of 3 months
Yeah.
to write it. So
Absolutely.
it's like, you know, create yourself a timeline of how you want to go about things. I think that's important, but enjoy coaching and
Mm-hmm.
realize like there's way more coming the longer you stay in it.
Absolutely. I think that's great. And that's great, guidance for the up and coming professional. But how does that relate then to one of your Gen Pop clients as well, where you were just talking about giving things time, watching the progressions, not looking at the next great Instagram model and thinking that should be you in 2 months? How does that then relate to one of your general population clients, and how do you translate to them and helping them understand sometimes progress in fitness takes time?
So, it's, we're going to have, obviously we'll have a sit down, and you have to understand where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So you get a Gen Pop client that's 45, 50 years old. You could be trainer number 12 for them. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Find out what, it's no different than me talking to an NBA veteran. Like, what do you like in the weight room? Right. What do you enjoy doing? What do you not like? Okay. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're coming from somewhere where you had bad training experience and you got hurt, and the sight of that barbell and the feeling of that barbell on your back for a back squat is just the worst thing in the world, well, why am I going to force it on you? Like, so you just have to really find out their previous experiences, what was able to happen and what wasn't able to happen, because you have to figure out, like, what maybe made them short of their goals,
Mm-hmm.
and help them understand, like, this is the guideline and plan that we can put together to make it happen. And it's got to be buy-in on both sides,
Mm-hmm.
right? Obviously there's a little give, and it's like, all right, like, whatever, but you still have to be in charge of the program. And like I said, they're paying you for your professional ability to guide them, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't mean dictate. It means guide. And you need to have a plan A, you need to have a plan 8.1,
Mm-hmm.
8.2, and just, sub things out and just find what works. And, like I said, it doesn't have to be everything. Like, you don't have to do all these crazy tests, but they could come in and squeeze a hand grip dynamometer every day, and that could be their daily readiness.
Mm-hmm.
Whether an athlete, I could put on a gym aware and do a 0.85 velocity on the squat. You just have to find there's multiple things, right?
Yep.
And you might talk to a 12-year-old kid and just ask him how he's feeling.
Yep.
That's it. So everything has a bucket to me, and you just have to pick the right thing out of the bucket, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, use the right assessments, use the right readiness. How do you express power? You always hear me say, express yourself. And I get destroyed a lot of times for those wet clubs and having people hammer them and swing them.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I'm getting a general pop person to express power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I didn't have to coach this.
Yep.
Okay. I don't like, what is the point of me taking 6 months to try to help them do a hang clean?
Mm-hmm.
If they don't really want it. If they want it, okay, that's a different story. But if I just have to find a way for them to express power, and I don't have to coach it, and I can just step back, there it is. Like, that's what I want.
Yep.
And that's what they want. If they're paying me for 60 minutes, they don't want 20 minutes of me slowing them down, cueing them, then when you get anything done.
Yeah.
So I think that's a thing that, a lot of people miss. It's like, listen, like, you're going to get fired because you didn't get anything done with this person.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't get their heart rate up. They're leaving and they're like, okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's an important thing for people to understand. Like, just find what works and do it. And you don't have to answer to the masses looking from the outside, because they're not involved. They're not in the inner circle.
Yeah.
They're not in the conversation. They're not one getting the check, and they're not the person that's happy doing it. So who cares?
Yeah. And I think that speaks to, how do you put the person, like your client, in the best place to succeed? And when you just post something online, like the people, everybody watching is not seeing the context of the session, right? But how are you putting your client in the best place to succeed while best utilizing both your and their time that they're paying for, without getting too technical? And I think, there's very often, I'm coaching less now than I did 5 years ago, just because you have to understand the variability of the movement, and is the person doing what? Are they expressing the quality, like power, that you want them to express? And you're not getting super technical, where, like you said, they don't really need to learn that, nor maybe they don't want to learn it. And when you're starting to get technical with some of those Olympic lifts, as your example was, like the clean or a snatch, or to me, that turns into just more sport specificity if you really want to train those lifts, right?
Yeah. And I think the one thing I got to over the years, that's like, if you're coming to me a lot of times where you're expecting to get high intensity output, and half the session is taking low skill coaching development, kind of misses the point, right? So a lot of times, like, my low intensity conditioning sessions with clients is exercise skill, practicing stuff. So I might give you something for May to work on. If we do 3 low intensity days a week in your program, right? Like, you might see this exercise in there, load the bar 30%. You're going to do whatever sets and reps. So you have 3 times a week, you have 12 training sessions before we might put it in to the high intensity part of the model in June. Right? So it just, that's what makes sense to me. I'm like, yeah, this is how you do it. Like, I don't have to, why am I coaching this on the high intensity day? Like, I need to prep, prime, get them to go, and train.
Yep.
And if I prep, prime them, give them a great warm up, and then take 20 minutes to be like, no, let's get this here. And then like, you lose the session.
Yeah.
So all my skill development stuff goes into low intensity days. Right. Okay. And they can watch the video of me doing the exercise. They can type me questions. They can send me video for feedback.
Yeah.
Right. So, I just think that's a smart approach if you have the ability to program somebody like that.
Absolutely. So take your ideal client, or your typical client, put that person in your head, and walk me through, if you're okay with it, walk me through what a typical week may look like for them, training session wise. If they're training 3 times a week with you, it sounds like you usually put that into certain segments of like you're doing the low skill development stuff first before you get it, and you're expecting that to be 4 to 6 weeks, and then you're getting to more high intensity stuff once they're more regular and they've demonstrated proficiency. Like if someone came to sign up with you, talk me through kind of your intake process, your assessments, and then how you're tailoring and monitoring their program.
So most of the time with General Pop, I think we have people coming in with a training background that is too mixed of a stimulus. Okay, so they're just doing too many things trying to put together in an hour. And I'm not saying it's like going to like a fusion class, like you're going to do like 20 minutes on a bike and then 20 minutes of yoga. But it's like, what are you trying to achieve out of this session? Right. So is it a high output day? Is it a capacity day? Is it a high volume type thing? Is it time circuits? Is it heart rate zone based? Am I trying to get you in yellow? Maybe one day a week we're trying to touch red, stuff like that. Low intensity days, we're doing blue and maybe touching some green. But usually when I get somebody into the program, I usually end up starting with 3 or 4 days a week of high intensity, because I want them to understand the difference. So if I brought you in for 4 days a week, maybe Monday and Thursday, we're trying to do things that raise the ceiling. Okay. Tuesday, Friday, we're trying to fill the room. We're doing volume, we're doing capacity, we're doing repeatability. And the other days is I'm trying to get them to do these low intensity strategies that they're not used to doing, that are very hard for people to do because they don't think it's enough, but they don't understand how it influences those next days coming.
I mean, you shouldn't be sore after every session with nothing left in the tank.
No. I mean, it's people just live in that 75 to 80% mode, right? And they can never really take it to 95, 100 because they're always just living in the middle, right? So I get them to do these things. I start doing some nasal breathing type activities with them, just like 20-minute cardio where I'm like, just try to breathe, just your nose. No one can do it. No one does it. They're like, I lasted like 3 minutes. I'm like, yeah, because you went too fast. Yeah. Or something along those lines. So that's part of the buy-in is in how the program design is. And if they can get through those 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm taking metrics with their training, so I'm actually showing them what they're doing. I think that's another thing people miss. Like they just think out working hard is going to pay off. Well, like you have to have something to measure sometimes to look at to see, was your effort rewarded? Like, is this making sense? Yep. Because it will tell me from a side, obviously, if I'm programming correctly, like maybe I have to back off some of the volume. But it lets them know like, oh, okay, wow. Like I thought I was bringing on this day, but I'm not. And then we can have a discussion. It's like, well, what'd you do yesterday? And it's like, well, I did too much. Okay. Yep. Because we're playing, we're trying to play the long game with these people. And, I tell people a lot of times, because people will train with me, but they'll have memberships to go somewhere else. They have access to different things. I'm like, just because you're paying for an unlimited membership doesn't mean you have to go every day to a high intensity or whatever session. Like it doesn't mean it's going to be good for you in the long run. It doesn't mean it's good for you to go to yoga 7 days a week if you're not doing something else to complement it. So it's just finding balance in your program and understanding how to manage your systems. And that's the starter for me, and people are like, think it's cool because like they send me their heart rate monitors now. They take a screenshot and it's like, oh man, like, right. So it's like I said, as much as it is physical work, I'm trying to lay an educational foundation for people, for things that I hope we don't have to talk about 3 months later. Like, listen, I'll re-cue it. I don't want to have to teach you a push-up again. I want you to understand what a push-up is, right? Like, I want you to understand what heart rate zones are. I want you to understand what this is, so it's not like we're just doing like a workout, like an A, B, or C, and this is what we do. It's like, no, like here's a 3-4 week progression. Here's what we're going to look at. And this is what we do in these 4 weeks. And this sets us up for these next 4 weeks. And, then you go away for 3 weeks. So this is the plan. And this is how we download, regress or something, maybe for some time away. But I want people to just have a good understanding and be able to know what to do on their own and use me for different things, right? Not saying I want to be more complicated. I don't. But there's, you can't touch certain things. There's no point unless they can do some of this, have a master's of the foundation stuff of what you expect people to have a grasp on.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you just took it right back to your, one of the main tenets you always go back to is the education of the clients. And I think you're getting buy-in from some of those people that are used to going, high intensity 100% of the time, because you're showing them the results and they're feeling better during the process because you're able to fluctuate their training appropriately and not always have them redlining at every workout.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's great. So what's next for you? You have all these things going on. I know you said you're going to one of the major strength and conditioning coach conferences as a company rep next week. But what's next for you moving forward in business and life?
For me personally, it's like I said, I've taken a deeper dive into the golf training market. So obviously I love golf. I love to play. But I've gotten more of a passion into the coaching side of it. Not saying I'm giving up the other stuff, but I just think, maybe it's the dynamics of when you work with clients in their, 30s and 40s and 50s now. Golf has become a very common sport. And it's a very unique thing to me because there's no sport in the world where I think you could see somebody on a chessboard or training and have, like, you look at them and you're like cringing at how they move, but they can still hit a golf ball.
Yeah.
Right. Like you can go to a country club and you can find a 78-year-old guy who can walks with a cane and you're like, and he's like a scratch golfer because he's still, so there's no sport that I think that has more compensation strategies than golf. Like people can't squat, people can't reach, people can't go arm overhead, they can't do this, but they find a way to hit a golf ball.
Right.
And I think that says something. I think it says something about resiliency and pliability, what I always talk about. And it's like, if they can do that, then there's a way for them to be able to train.
Yeah.
Not saying they have to go through all corrective strategies and stuff like that, but they're finding a way to golf, right? They're finding a way to swing a golf club violently or whatever and hit a ball accurately. So it's like, yeah, you know what? Like, there's definitely a way that person can still train. It's just finding strategies and finding ways that work for that person. And, that's just exploring everything. And I think that it's a discussion I've been having a lot with people because you see my videos. It's like, it's all it's squatting with a safety bar in your hands in reach position.
Yeah.
Right. Like, squatting for me has always been tough because the way my back is, and me using that assist, like, just eliminates everything.
Yeah.
Like, obviously wedges are out there now too. Like, we're finding all these cool things that help put people under load, and able to train hard.
Yeah.
And then go do whatever they have to do for themselves, whatever might things that we might take time on to fix. But it doesn't mean we have to be like, whoa. We need to wait like 3 or 6 months before we load this type of strategy.
Yeah.
No, there's ways you can load it. 100%.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks to your time in the game and the education that you've been to, because there's always a way for someone to train, and you don't have to. You're finding, like you said, like, all of these people, everybody has compensation, right? And you really need to strive toward what we would consider, in quotations, perfect movement? Or can we bias training to fit a person's body type and movement capacity and work in correctives there somewhere so you can still continue to train them hard? Versus even recently, people were saying, like you said, you shouldn't load dysfunctional movement. But maybe there's a better way to train this person, or a better exercise for them at this point in time, right? And I think that speaks to your philosophy, that speaks to the things that you've done to better yourself educationally. But I think if people are out there looking for a trainer and they've been told all these things, like you should never squat again because you have a bad back, or you should never deadlift because you have a bad back, I think you should stay away from absolutes 100% in the fitness industry, because there's always a way that you can find an exercise to challenge your strength and power and capacity to get the results that you want.
Yeah. We went through that corrective decade where people bring in their medical injury history and you read it in front of them and you're like, ooh, oh, we can't do this.
Yeah.
And now like when people come in, they tell me their stuff. I just go like, yeah, that's normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people have that. Yeah. You're fine. Yeah. Let's go lift. And they look at me like I'm nuts. I'm like, no, this is how we'll do it. And they go, oh, wow. Okay. I can put front foot lifted on a low box and I can have one hand holding a suspension trainer.
Yeah.
And now I can stay upright.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is how we can do it.
Yeah.
So like, I think that's an important thing, is to not like freak out in front of people when they tell you what they're dealing with or where they're coming from. It's kind of just like, yeah, all right, cool. We've seen it before. Yeah. There's a way to train. Let's go.
Yeah. And we could go down this whole rabbit hole of our reactions and the language that we use with people. But I think that's just, if we're going to get any point across, and the one of the most important ones is the one we just made, is there's always a way that you can train. More and more studies are coming out saying from a medical side that most people have a disc herniation or a rotator cuff tear or a labrum tear, and surgeries. We're prescribing a lot more surgeries. And of course, I'm coming from a biased physical therapist point of view, but there is research out there saying that there's surgeries being overprescribed, and you're getting the same outcomes with conservative care as you are with surgical care. But I think it's just finding the right people and finding the right professionals that understand what's going on and understand how to work you through the injury process.
Yeah. And like I said, I went through it. I think I was a little like hands up, not, maybe we shouldn't do this. And, you just learn like, okay, yeah, there's ways to do it. And that's why I always say, like, if you treat people like glass, they'll shatter like glass.
100%. Yep.
You have to teach people how they can be resilient, how they can be pliable in certain environments, in certain situations. And yeah, some exercises are going to be a bad idea. All right. But like I said, if that's really what you want to do, and like I know you do it with people, you go, here's what you do from a prep side of things, and here's what you do post that exercise to give yourself the best whatever. One, to do it, and two, to overcome whatever problems it might rise up for somebody. So it's just creating strategies for people. That's all it is.
Yep.
And let them go about their day.
Love it. So in closing here, Jim, I want to, we do this with everybody, is we just kind of end with final five questions to give people perspective into who you really are. Let's do it. Let's just get into it, because I want to hear some of these answers. I think I know some of them because you've shared many of them online already, because you're pretty active online and you give people insight into who you are. Okay. But what would be your walkout song? Number one.
I think my walkout song, I'm going to like Home Plate. I mean,
or maybe it's just your first session of the week. You're walking in on Monday morning.
I mean, it might have to be Thunderstruck.
That's a classic.
It might have to be that. You set the tone,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Thunderstruck's always played in Thor, and Thor, when he drives that hammer into the ground, it's just like you're setting the tone.
For those of you that are wondering, Jim has his own Thor hammer. Favorite exercise?
Right now,
now,
the hand assisted safety bar squat.
Okay. If you had one food for the rest of your life,
all time, hammer strength incline press. That's my favorite machine.
Okay. How often do you work
with rubber bands attached?
When was the last time you did that?
One of the best pump. It's been a while. Because I usually, where I lifted on Fridays doesn't have hammer strength.
So was that your Friday pump before you met your wife? You'd always hit the hammer strength incline?
Probably since like 1999.
One food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Pizza.
Any particular spot in the Philly area?
I'm a big Stogie Joe's guy. South Philly. It's like walkable to Newman Goretti High School. Square pie, like upside down, sauce on top. It's different.
It's classic. What's your guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure. I don't think I have anything that's guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Probably the guilty part is probably too many double IPAs.
Fair. That's definitely fair. Do you have a go-to?
Obviously I enjoy exploring them. I'm a big fan, obviously, of Tired Hands. And then, obviously anything from the Vermont area that you just can't get your hands on.
Yeah.
Obviously Heady Toppers and some other stuff that, might come down from there.
Absolutely. And then finally, what's your favorite thing about the Philadelphia area as a lifer? You've been around, you've seen it all. What's your favorite thing?
I think because I was telling someone yesterday, I was like, I just have a weird thing with when we lose, I love listening to sports radio because the true personalities come out.
Yeah.
Like if you listen to WIP yesterday after the Sixers lost, it was just it was just their souls. It was real. Like people were losing their minds.
I don't know about you, but I'm worried about this.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It should be.
Oh my goodness. Could you imagine?
Yeah. But I just enjoy, I've been to a lot of cities, and Philly, I think, is just a perfect size. Yeah. And it's just got such dynamics to it. Like, you got the Fishtown, then you got the South Philly, then you got Center City. It's just, there's so much, variability down around, and just a great place to walk around. And, you got Fairmount Boathouse Row, which is obviously special to me.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, Jim, let people know how they can get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you for training services or just to kind of see what you're doing. What's the best way to get a hold of you? What's some of your social media?
So GYM Ferris is Instagram. It's gymferris@gmail.com for my email. Jim Ferris is on, same thing with Twitter as well. And
you're super active. You're putting up multiple stories and posts a day. I don't know how you do it and stay on top of it, but I appreciate.
It's an annoying amount to some people, but
yeah,
is what it is.
But Jim, this was a special interview for me. I appreciate you for all that you've done for me, for everything that you've done for strength and conditioning professionals, the rehab profession as a whole. I think you're doing great work. You really bring people back to the center. And then online, when you post something, you're not afraid to be challenged. You'll get into a healthy debate with somebody, and you'll learn as much from that debate as hopefully the other person learns, but you're never shooting someone down. You're taking it on. And I appreciate that about you too, is where you're always open for a good discussion where you can learn from. So I appreciate it.
I appreciate it. If you ever see me in unhealthy ones, just tell me. Get me out of it.
Well, I appreciate you, Jim. Thanks a lot for hopping on.
Thanks, my man.
All right.
Have a day.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah, man.
I appreciate you, and you're the best.
Rock on.
All right, cool. What's your week look like? Well, actually, next month I'm going to get crushed. But anyway, let's get out first week in June. Like on a Friday or something.
Yeah. I got to go on your link and reserve that for me. Do I have to pay for it or just reserve it?
No, you have to pay for it. But we only have 36 people right now. Last year we had 100 something. So there's still a ton of space.
Okay. All right. I got to make sure Strag is in and all that.
Cool. I appreciate you. Thank you.
All right.
All right, man. I'll talk to you.
All right, buddy. See you.